The piece of stoneware I'd been centering on the wheel had been a bowl for about 30 seconds before I let it collapse. Not on purpose, just because my hands stopped paying attention, the way hands do when the brain goes elsewhere. I wiped them on my apron and looked around my studio, clay dust on every surface, a row of greenware drying on wire racks, the radiator ticking like it always did when October remembered it was supposed to be cold. This was my world, built out of a $200 pottery wheel, a shared kiln space in Gowanus, and 3 years of farmers' markets and craft fairs before the Soho Gallery finally called. The Meridian Commission, 12 installation pieces for their new wing, was the kind of thing I'd stopped believing would happen. Aaron had been there the night I found out. He'd brought champagne at 10:30 because I'd texted him, shaking, from the parking lot outside the gallery. That was who Aaron Alderton was, thoughtful in the way that felt earned rather than performed. 3 months of that. 3 months of coffee left on my work table without me asking. 3 months of him asking real questions about glaze chemistry, because he actually wanted to understand, not just look attentive. 3 months, and now his mother had invited me to the family's annual charity gala at the Alderton estate in Greenwich. It's a big deal, Aaron told me on the phone that Wednesday. I could hear him smiling. She doesn't invite girlfriends, she invited you. Should I be flattered or terrified? Both, honestly. He laughed, but then his voice shifted, something careful moving in underneath the warmth. There's one thing I should mention. My brother will be there. You have a brother? Twin brother, Logan. A pause. We're identical, same face, same height, but that's where it ends. I waited. He runs the actual company, Alderton Industries. Development, construction, some investment operations that are better described as complicated. Aaron chose his words the way someone chooses footing on ice. I do the philanthropy side. There's a reason for that division. Logan he's not like me, Renee. Just keep that in mind. That warning sat with me for the rest of the week. The drive from Brooklyn to Greenwich on Saturday evening felt like passing through a membrane. The city blurred into highway, highway into suburb, suburb into the kind of landscape that existed, to remind you that some people had always had more than enough. The Alderton estate sat behind iron gates on a road with no streetlights, just the blue-gray of an October dusk, and the glow of what I initially thought were lanterns, but turned out to be the windows of a house the size of my entire block. Aaron squeezed my hand in the car. Breathe. I'm breathing. You're breathing like someone who isn't. The gala was already in motion when we arrived. 200 guests in cocktail attire, a string quartet in the corner, caterers moving through the crowd with trays of things that cost more per bite than my grocery budget. Constance Alderton found us within minutes. Silver-haired and sharp-eyed, she pulled me into a hug that surprised me with its warmth. Aaron told me about the Meridian Commission, she said, holding me at arm's length. 12 installation pieces. That's extraordinary. I'm still getting used to saying it out loud, I admitted. She smiled. You will, come. Roland wants to meet you. Roland Alderton was the kind of man who'd clearly been formidable at 50 and was simply more so at 65. He asked me 3 precise questions about my work and listened to the answers without interrupting, which I later learned was his version of approval. Their daughter Bridget was a younger, sharper version of her mother. She assessed me with what I could only describe as corporate-grade interest, and then said, Interior design? Ceramics. Better, she said, like she was updating a file. Aaron had warned me that Logan was always late, that he treated every entrance like a calculated move. But an hour into the gala, he hadn't appeared yet, and I'd started to relax into the rhythm of the evening. Aaron got pulled away by his father to talk to a donor. I drifted toward the back of the house, following a hallway to a pair of French doors that opened onto the garden. October had stripped most of the leaves from the maples, but the estate grounds were still beautiful. String lights threaded through the branches, koi ponds lit softly from below. I stepped outside because I needed a minute of quiet, and the air was cold enough to be honest. That's when I saw him. Standing at the far edge of the main pond, hands in his jacket pockets, facing the water. Dark suit, dark hair. Aaron's exact height, Aaron's exact build. He must have slipped outside to escape the noise, I thought. He must have needed the same quiet I did. I walked toward him across the lawn, my heels sinking slightly into the grass. When I was close enough, I touched his arm, lightly, the way you touch someone you've touched 100 times. I didn't know where you'd gone, I said. He turned around. Same face, same bone structure, same dark eyes, but the way those eyes moved when they found mine, that was not Aaron. Aaron's gaze was warm on arrival. This was something else. Measuring. Still. Like a camera that had already taken the shot before you knew you'd been photographed. You must be Renee, he said. His voice was deeper than Aaron's by just half a register. I'm the wrong Alderton. I took a step back. My hand went to my face before I could stop it. I'm so sorry, I thought. You look exactly identical, he said, with the faintest inclination of his head. So I've been told. He extended his hand, Logan. I shook it because refusing would have been worse. His grip was firm, and he held it a second longer than necessary before releasing it. Not aggressive, just deliberate, like everything about him had been decided in advance. I'm mortified, I managed. Don't be. There was something at the corner of his mouth that wasn't quite a smile. It was the most interesting thing that's happened to me at one of these events in years. He walked me back inside. Aaron found us at the French doors, and his eyes did a quick, quiet scan. Me, his brother, the space between us. That told me he'd already cataloged everything before I said a word. I see you've met, Aaron said, his voice perfectly even. Briefly, Logan said, nothing else. At dinner I was seated between Aaron and his mother, which meant Logan was directly across the table. He said very little. He didn't need to. There was a quality to his silence that was different from quietness. It was the silence of someone who was listening to everything and filing it away somewhere. You'd never find it. Constance asked about my work. I talked about the Meridian pieces, about the months in my studio testing glazes that had to hold up to museum-grade lighting. Logan listened without looking like he was listening. But when I mentioned I'd fired and refired one particular piece 11 times before I got the surface right, something shifted in his expression. Not warmth exactly. Something sharper. The recognition of what it meant to do a thing that many times until it was right. The rest of the evening passed in a controlled blur. Logan contributed little to the conversation, but dominated the room anyway, and when Aaron finally drove me home, and I went upstairs to my apartment and replayed the whole evening, the detail I kept returning to wasn't the family or the estate or the art on the walls. It was the pond, the way Logan had turned, the 2 seconds before I understood what I was looking at. Tanya came by my studio on Thursday, the way she always did when something was wrong, which was to say I hadn't texted her in 4 days. You look like you're solving a physics equation using guilt, she announced, sitting on my supply cabinet. What happened? I told her about the garden, the hand on his arm, the voice that was Aaron's but wasn't. She was quiet for about 3 seconds, which was a record. Is he attractive? They're identical. That's not what I asked. I set down the piece I was working on. Yes. In a way that's completely different from how Aaron is attractive, which doesn't even make sense because they have the same face. It makes total sense, Tanya said. Aaron is attractive like a Sunday morning. Easy, good, comfortable. What does Logan feel like? I didn't answer for a long moment. Like standing too close to something that could either warm you or burn you, and not being entirely sure you mind either way. Tanya nodded slowly. So you're in trouble. I'm not in trouble. I care about Aaron. He's good for me. Good for you, she repeated. That's a ringing endorsement. I saw Logan again 10 days later, not at a family event, but at an opening for a friend's gallery show in Tribeca. He was there with 2 men in the kind of suits that meant business, and he saw me the exact moment I saw him, which should have been statistically unlikely given the crowd. Aaron wasn't with me. He had a foundation board meeting. Logan crossed the room. I didn't know you'd be here, I said. I'm on the gallery's development board. He scanned the room briefly, then came back to me. I also didn't know you would be. I do know you came alone. We stood in a corner for 40 minutes, talking about the work on the walls, about what it meant to build something from nothing, about the specific loneliness of being good at something. Other people don't entirely understand. Logan spoke sparingly but precisely, and I noticed he asked questions, instead of making statements when he wanted to know something about me, which meant that by the time I left, I'd told him more about myself than I'd planned. He walked me to the door. Outside on the sidewalk, he handed me my coat. "You're thinking about this wrong," he said. Not a goodbye I was expecting. "About what?" "Whatever you're telling yourself this is." He met my eyes with that steady, unsettling focus. "Aaron is a good man. I'm not arguing against that. But you do this thing. I've watched you do it twice now, where you hold very still because you're afraid to react. Like you're managing yourself." "I'm not doing that." "You're doing it right now." He put his hands in his jacket pockets. "You stopped yourself from laughing at something I said earlier. I saw it." Maybe it wasn't funny enough. The corner of his mouth moved, that almost smile, the one that wasn't quite safe to look at directly. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe you're worried about what it means if you laugh." He said goodnight and walked back inside, and I stood on that sidewalk in the cold far longer than I should have. I told Aaron I'd run into Logan when he called that night. His silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds too long. "At the gallery," he said finally. "He's on their board, apparently." "He's on a lot of boards." Aaron's voice was careful, level. "Renee, is there something I should know about?" "No," I said, and in the strict sense that was true. But when we hung up, I sat on my studio floor surrounded by half-finished work and understood that there was a version of no that was technically accurate and emotionally dishonest, and I was living inside that version. The second Alderton family dinner was a Sunday 3 weeks later. I dressed carefully, gray cashmere, tailored black pants, armor that didn't look like it. Logan was already there when we arrived, standing at the window in the sitting room with a glass of something amber, and when he turned, our eyes met across the room before Aaron had even gotten my coat off. Dinner was smaller than the gala, more honest. Roland asked pointed questions about the ceramic industry that were actually interesting. Bridget wanted to talk about the gallery commission from a business angle. I liked her more than I expected to. Logan ate quietly and said almost nothing until I mentioned, in passing, that I'd almost turned down the Meridian commission because the timeline scared me. "Why did you take it?" he asked. Everyone looked at him. He rarely spoke at these dinners. When he did, it had weight. "Because the version of me that turns it down out of fear isn't the version I want to be," I said. He held my gaze for a moment. "That's the right answer." Aaron's hand found mine under the table. I held it, but something had shifted in the evening's architecture, and I couldn't shift it back. After dinner, Aaron and Roland disappeared into the study. Constance took Bridget to the kitchen. I was alone in the sitting room with Logan. "You're not going to leave," he said. He was standing by the window, but facing me this time. "Whatever reason you think you have to go somewhere else right now, it isn't the real reason. I'm dating your brother." "I'm aware." He moved to the chair across from mine and sat with the unhurried confidence of someone who'd already decided how this would end and was simply waiting for everyone else to arrive at the same conclusion. And I've stayed out of it. There's a version of this where I would have called, shown up, made myself unavoidable. I didn't. "Why?" "Because you needed to get there yourself." His dark eyes held mine. "What you're feeling isn't something I manufactured. It was there the night in the garden, before either of us said a word." "Logan, tell me I'm wrong." I couldn't. "Tell me you haven't thought about that moment, that you haven't been trying to unnotice the things you've noticed. That when Aaron stepped away at dinner last month, and your first feeling was something that should have been relief but wasn't. Tell me that wasn't real." The silence between us was very loud. "He's a good person," I said finally. "Aaron is genuinely good." "He is. No sarcasm, no performance. He's the best version of what our family could have produced if none of the rest of it existed. I've known that my whole life." He paused. "I'm not asking you to choose danger over safety. I'm asking whether the person you are with Aaron is the whole person, or a polished version you put on because it fits the story you think you should be living." The truth sat in my chest like something fired too fast, still hot, still fragile at the seams. "When I'm with him," I said slowly, I feel cared for, safe. And with me? Seen. The word came out before I decided to say it, which is terrifying. He nodded once. I know. Aaron found us 5 minutes later. He looked at my face and he knew. I could see it land on him like something physical. We drove back to the city in near silence. On the highway, he spoke. How long? Nothing has happened. I want you to know that. I believe you, he exhaled. That almost makes it worse. He was quiet for a long stretch of road. I knew the night in the garden. I saw his face at dinner, and I recognized what that was because I've seen it before. Logan doesn't look at things he doesn't want. He glanced at me briefly. And you've been different. Careful, like you were managing yourself. I didn't deny it. Logan had used the same word. I need you to decide, Aaron said. I won't wait while you figure it out. Not because I'm angry, but because I can't do this halfway. You deserve better than halfway, and so do I. I called Tanya when I got home. She answered on the first ring. Tell me what you want, she said. Not what's smart or fair, what you actually want. Both, I said, and that's not an answer. No, she agreed. Pick the one you could live without, and you have your answer. I sat with that for 2 days. I sat with it in my studio, pressing clay into shapes and collapsing them. I sat with it at 2 a.m. with the lights off. I sat with it until I understood that I was stalling, not because I didn't know, but because knowing meant doing something about it, and doing something about it would cause real harm to someone I genuinely cared about. Then I texted Logan, I need to talk to you. He responded in under a minute, my place, tonight, I'll send the address. His apartment was in the financial district, high enough that the city below looked like a circuit board. Not flashy in the way I'd expected, spare, considered, every object chosen for a reason. Books stacked on every flat surface, real ones with cracked spines. A drafting table covered in development plans. A piano against the far wall, the bench pulled out at an angle that meant it had been recently used. He poured 2 glasses of wine without asking. He was barefoot, which for some reason made him easier to breathe around. You came to tell me you're choosing Aaron, he said. I came to figure out what I'm choosing. I wrapped my hands around the glass. I need to understand what this actually is, not what it feels like, what it is. He was quiet for a moment. Then he set his glass down and faced me fully. I have been in control of the things in my life for a very long time, he said. The company, the decisions, the negotiations that happen outside boardrooms, my family, in ways they don't entirely know about. He paused. And then you walked toward me in the dark, thinking I was someone else. And said, I've been looking for you. And I understood what it felt like to want something without a strategy. Logan. I'm not finished. He moved closer. I've watched you for 3 months try to talk yourself out of this. I watched you hold yourself still in that gallery. I watched you choose your words carefully every time you talked to me, like you could manage the outcome if you were just precise enough. He reached out and tucked a piece of hair behind my ear. Small, quiet, deliberate. You don't have to manage this. That's all I'm saying. I could hurt Aaron badly, I said. Yes. Your family. We'll adjust, he held my gaze. Ren, what do you want? I looked at him, past the controlled surface, to the man who read books, until their spines gave out and played piano alone, and had stayed back for 3 months when he didn't have to. You, I said, even though it complicates everything and hurts someone who deserves better, I want you. He kissed me, not tentative, the kind that meant something had been decided. Aaron met me at his office the next morning. When I knocked on the open door, he was standing at his window and he didn't turn around right away. I'm sorry, I said. I mean that. You've been nothing but good to me, and you deserved more than this. He turned. His expression was careful, contained. Is it serious? With him? I think so, yes. He nodded once. I told you he was dangerous. You did. And maybe that's not the right word for it. I met his eyes. Maybe the word is honest. He's honest in a way that's hard to be around. It doesn't leave room for pretending. Aaron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady, though it cost him something. Sunday dinners are going to be strange. I know. My mother will take your side immediately. My father will conduct a risk assessment and conclude it's a net positive for the family. Bridget will claim she saw it coming. A pause. And I'll be fine, eventually. I walked to the door and stopped. You're a good person, Aaron. The right person is going to find that out and be so glad they did. Just not you, he said quietly. Not me. I left his office and stood on the sidewalk in the November cold and let myself feel all of it, the grief, the guilt, the strange and terrible relief. My phone buzzed. Logan, how did it go? Me, it's done. 3 dots, then I'm outside. I found him half a block down, leaning against his car. He took one look at my face, opened his arms, and I walked into them and stayed there while the city moved around us. Okay, he said against my hair. Whatever comes next, we handle it together. The first Sunday dinner after everything was the kind of thing that required everybody to be on their best behavior, and mostly they were. Constance greeted me with warmth and a directness I'd come to expect from her. Roland shook my hand and looked at Logan with an expression that was less surprise than confirmation. Bridget raised an eyebrow and said, I did see it coming, which made Aaron snort despite himself. Aaron came late. He was quiet, and when he looked at Logan and me across the table, there was pain in it, real and undisguised. I didn't look away. I owed him that much to see it and not flinch. After dinner, he found me on the back terrace while Logan was inside talking to his father. I'm not going to be weird about it, Aaron said. I want you to know that. Family is family. You don't have to be okay with it right now. No, he leaned on the railing, but I will be, someday. He glanced toward the doors. He's different with you. He looks at you differently than I've ever seen him look at anything. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. I'm sorry, I said again, because there wasn't anything else that was true enough. Stop apologizing. He pushed off the railing. Go back inside. He's probably already counting the minutes. I laughed, surprised. He almost smiled. It wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. There were weeks when people in the design world said things that were unkind and not entirely inaccurate. There were Sunday dinners heavy with things unsaid. There was a stretch where Aaron and Logan barely spoke, and Constance would steer the conversation around the silence like water finding its way around stone. But Logan never wavered. He introduced me at business events with a matter-of-factness that left no room for interpretation. He showed up at my studio openings and stood in the back and asked the gallery director questions about the ceramics installation impressive enough that she mentioned it to me afterward. He told me the truth about the gray areas of his work, the development projects with complicated funding structures, the negotiations that happened outside of boardrooms, and he told me because he thought I deserved to know before I got in any deeper. You could still go, he said one evening. We were in his kitchen, late, and he was being more careful than usual in a way that meant something. I know, I said. I'm not the simple option. Aaron was the simple option. I set down my glass. Simple got complicated too. He was quiet. Then, the gala next year, I want you there, with me. Not as Aaron's date, as mine. He said it the way he said everything important, precisely, without hedging, if that's what you want. Logan. Ren. His voice went softer on it than it ever did on anything else. Yes, I said, that's what I want. My Meridian pieces went up in March. Logan stood in the gallery on opening night, in the corner where he always stood, and watched me talk to collectors and critics, and people who doubted me a few years ago, and now wanted to shake my hand. When I finally made my way across the room to him, he looked at me with that steady gaze that had first unsettled me in an October garden. You built all of this, he said, with 11 failed firings. 12, I think you said. The corner of his mouth moved, and you fired them anyway. Aaron came to the opening. He shook Logan's hand. He told me the pieces were beautiful, and I believed it because Aaron had never been anything but honest. He was there with someone, a woman who worked in environmental law, who laughed easily and asked him real questions, and I felt something uncomplicate inside me when I saw the way he looked at her when she wasn't watching. I found Logan beside me again after Aaron left. He's going to be okay, Logan said. I know. He took my hand, and I held it, and I thought about what it had cost to get here, The wrong person touched in a garden. The unbearable weeks of honesty. The choice made not because it was safe, or because it was dangerous, but because it was true. Sometimes you reach for what you know and find something you weren't expecting. And the bravest thing, the only thing, really, is to stop reaching back.